because they're out there, that's for sure, they're just not out. So I always congratulate people who are bisexual and who are out bisexuals, because it's helping all of us.
Well, the other side of that is that it is true among like high school students or even people in their early 20s, people will come out as bi because in their minds that's less stigma than gay. And they'll say that to their parents to kind of give their parents hope, or say that to their friends, and for them it's a transition. And so yes, there is a lot of cynicism in the gay community about, especially among younger people, younger adults, about somebody, a male identifying as bi. On the other hand, there are way too many married males who are attracted to men, but are married to a female, and they really are truly bisexual. And well, and some of them aren't. Some of them truly are gay. They're not having sex with their wife at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I came out as bi because I was afraid that I was going to hurt my mom too much. And it was, I guess, a little easier for her, but really when it came down to it, it was harder because she was clinging on to that for too long. Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, it's that kind of rocky patch, and that's, yeah, I do feel for a lot of bisexual people, because I know especially when I was in my 20s, I said some pretty shady things to bisexuals. I was just like, yeah, right, whatever. You're not, you're just not down there. Well, yeah.
Well, you could say that about, and it does happen, because I think, what a lot of people in the acronym, and when I say the acronym, I mean the LGBTQ alphabet soup. What I noticed is, a lot of people forget what it's like to be a queer person and to hear from a straight person, I came out as a queer person in high school, and this is, what, I'd like to say this, I've never said this publicly, the first person I ever really fell in love with was a man, and, that's just a really good thing to get off my chest while I'm talking right here. But, I think it's important to remember that whenever you come out as a queer person, a lot of people say, like I was identifying as a dude, because I was 16. And a lot of people say things to you like, well, you just haven't met the right woman, that kind of stuff. Like the straight people will, throw you a beer and be like, let's talk about why you need to look at more babes, and then, so when we grow up and we get so used to it's so awesome to be like, oh, well, yeah, I'm gay and I'm proud of it, that kind of thing, or I'm queer, I'm a lesbian, and then, you meet a bisexual person and it's easy to jump to, like, oh yeah, okay, well, come join the fun, but we gotta remember that someone once said the same things to us whenever we came out as queer people, because we didn't adhere to the way they thought, and so now when we are kind of joking around with people, mainly we don't mean it in the most, sinister way or anything like that, but when we joke around with people's orientations or their identities, what we're saying is, I don't really respect you that much. And we need to remember sometimes what that is like, because a lot of us forget it. So I hate to be the one to say this, but check privilege.
Do you want to talk, because I don't think we've covered that at all tonight, about the difference between gender orientation and sexual identity and how they're not necessarily aligned?
Okay, yeah, definitely.
The idea that trans women can be attracted to women.
Yeah. Well, I want to, I noticed you flipped it around a little bit, and I just kind of want to clear that up. It's gender identity and sexual orientation. Gender identity...
Did I say it wrong?
Yeah.
My age.
Yeah,
I'm playing that age card.
Ageist. Hashtag triggered. Gender identity is who you go to bed as, and sexual orientation is who you go to bed with.
There you go.
Simple as that. And then, but a lot of the questions that I got when I came out is, okay, so you're transitioning to female, do you like guys now? And I was like, well, I've liked guys all along, but I mean, that's not how it works. Do all women like men? Obviously not. You ever met Rosie O'Donnell? Probably not. But if you did, she probably wouldn't talk about her husband with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we need to remember that identity and orientation are two separate things, and you know, trans women can be into women and still be lesbians. I dated a girl over this past summer who identified as a lesbian. She had absolutely no issues with my identity or my anatomy, and that's wonderful. Trans men, obviously we have proof that trans men can be gay, and you know, it doesn't matter your anatomy so much as like your identity is reflected in that as well. So it is important to remember the difference between identity and orientation.
I had 3 separate shrinks, and I used the term in that way because they were so disrespectful to me as a person. Tell me that I could not be trans. You know why? Because there's not a woman in this place that I would have sex with. I'm not sexually attracted to women in any way, shape, or form. And I went through almost 2 years of therapy trying to find a therapist who got the idea that you could be trans and not be interested in your birth sex. And I finally went to a doctor, and Missouri doesn't technically have informed consent, but we do have a few doctors that do informed consent. They're just hard to find. And I said, if you don't put me on testosterone, I'm going to buy it underground. Those are your options. I need to transition. I don't want to. Somebody tells me that they want to transition, I tell them to come back when it's a need. Because if it's a want, you're not ready. And I said, I have to do this. I can't keep living as her. And he put me through a barrage of questions, drew blood. I had to come back 4 days later and sit in his office on pins and needles, nervous, waiting, and finally got that shot. I got skipped out of his office, although my damn leg was hurt. And then I went and found a therapist because I knew I still needed a therapist to be able to get my chest surgery. And I walked into one, and I crossed my arms over my chest. And he goes, what's the matter? And I said, I'm not sitting down. And he goes, why? And I said, I have to ask you a question first. I said, do you have an issue with the fact that I'm trans and gay? Because if you're going to tell me I've got to be into girls to transition, I'm going to walk out now and save myself a whole lot of time and headaches. And he goes, what I see before me is a guy with a pretty big chip on his shoulder right now. 6 months later, I had my chest surgery on it. I had to wait another almost 2 years to be able to get the chest surgery for financial reasons. But he never once questioned whether or not I was me. So for 3 shrinks, they don't deserve whatever their official titles were, because they were operating under heteronormative standards. And the lady that was asking about bisexuals, I think that's part of it, is heteronormative standards. It's easy to forget that bisexuals exist when they're in a heterosexual relationship. Whether or not you're bisexual or pansexual or omnisexual or one of the other labels that are out there, if you are in what appears to be a heterosexual relationship, the majority of people are going to assume, and we know what assuming does, they're going to assume that you're straight.
We have time for one more question. There wasn't so much pushback as just like
Yeah.
they just washed their hands of it. When I first asked my, I'm not gonna do names, but my supervising assistant principal, they're like, let's talk to the doctor. The doctor was like, talk to the counselors. And I talked to the counselors and they're like, when do you start? So they're just like, they didn't know how to process it, but we have we have our meetings, we hang up posters advertising the meetings, the posters disappear. Every year we have the Day of Silence, and that's when we get the biggest attention. And most of the feedback that I get from the faculty is very, very supportive. Nothing really negative, just kind of like confused, like, okay, whatever. But most of the support, most of the feedback I've gotten has been very, very supportive and encouraging.
I know my daughter really appreciated the GSA when she was at Washington.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of kids. Right.
It is a pretty fine line to walk sometimes, especially as a teacher. As teachers are looked so much with under a microscope, and we're supposed to be one thing at school and do that same thing at home. And it is very difficult. And I try to make sure, because just this week I had kids say, you know, oh, I hate Obama. And I was like, why do you hate Obama? I was like, you're in second grade. Like, why would you hate anyone? He's like, because he allowed same-sex, because he allowed same-sex people to get married. I'm like, okay, well, first off, it wasn't him, it was the Supreme Court, but, you know, whatever. And I have to be so careful not to be like, no, you're wrong. You know, you still have to respect other people's rights to believe whatever they need to believe in, just like we have our own rights. And so just being as patient as possible. And I just responded back with, well, I don't feel that same way, but you're allowed to feel that way, but I don't feel that same way. And it was what it was.
And let's remember that unfortunately in the state of Missouri,
Yeah,
we do not have, LGBT people do not have legal protection.
that's right. And
So,
it is scary.
I was kind of shocked listening to you tell your story about communicating with your superintendent, because if you're even just perceived as being LGBT, you can be fired without question. And I hear that. I know a lot of people who've lost their jobs who aren't out at work for fear of losing their jobs. And if someone is fired for that reason, a lot of people who aren't educated on this will say, well, you should just sue. But you can't
Yeah,
sue
just
because
sue.
the law protects the
Mhm.
firer or the person who denies someone housing. Or
And then trying to find another job then after that, because then you
Right.
just seem like you're somebody who just likes to rock the boat. And then, yeah, it just can completely ruin your life. And it's scary, but you also need to be yourself too, which is, it's tough. But
It's a fine line. It's, you know, in the state of Kentucky, there's a law on the books that if it's even to the point of like if a park ranger feels, if you're in a state park and a park ranger feels that you are of a sexual orientation that is not hetero, or if you are living in an apartment building, the landlord then has the right to evict you from your apartment. They have the right to kick you out of that state park. They have the right to, and an example of it was we had friends that were taking photographs in a state park, and they were just, it was kind of like engagement photos. It wasn't a lot of PDA. It was just they were together in the photos, and it was two ladies in the photos, and the park ranger came in and took the camera and took the photos and kicked them out. And so when I came here to interview, I brought it up in my interview. I said, just so everybody is understanding that when I'm in, you know, when I'm working in the theater or I'm working or I'm in the community and you're going to see me with my partner. And she's probably going to be a student here. So I just want to put that out there. And it was kind of interesting because after I got the job, we moved here and started to get to know people. It was really, really comforting to have a good handful of the, you know, the administration come up to me and say, first, you know, we're very proud of you for coming out and we're happy that you're here and we're great that you're happy and all these types of things. But number two, you're the second person to do that in an interview. Is that the new thing to do? And I said, no, it's not the new, I guess it's not the new thing to do. It's not like we got, you know, like a telegraph that said, hey guys, just so everybody knows, you gotta start coming out again. No, it was this thing where it's like, I just wanted to be honest. Because I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna say things and you're gonna see me with my wife and you're gonna see us in the community and I don't wanna hide, and I'm not going to. You know, if a student comes up and asks me, I don't blatantly bring it up in class, but I definitely do not hide it, so.
And you wanted to say something?
This is more something for Logan to bounce off of. When he first came out as trans to me and my sisters, I was in my sister's room. He had sat all of us on the bed. You can continue.
I had, I gotta say that more around this one. Because, sorry, this one chokes me up to this day, talking about it. I had a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 10-year-old sitting on, all in a row on a twin-size bed. And I squatted down to talk to them. Because I didn't want them feeling like I was talking down to them. I wanted to be down below their level. Because I was looking for their acceptance. And I told them, you know, when you're a kid and, you know, grandma buys you clothes that you think look cool, and you put them on, they're scratchy and they're itchy and they just don't fit right, you don't like the way they look in the mirror. Or, you know, when there's a new restaurant in town, everybody's going to eat there. Everybody wants to eat there. It's great food. It's a great place to go eat. You go, you look at the menu, oh, nothing looks good. You order something anyway because you're already there. Well, you really don't like the food. You leave and you're a little queasy.